brought my phone because I think that I printed way too much material, and so I'm going to have a stopwatch. So this is from a play called Ciertas Astillas, Certain Splinters, and I don't think any of you have ever heard any of it before. That's scary and fun. What you need to know about my grandmother is that one time in an airport, her only son said to her, "You're an ungrateful piece of shit," and he turned and he left her there, standing alone, the airport ceiling pressing down on her from all the way up there because the concourse was suddenly too small to hold all of her anger. After everything she'd done for him, after the years of shutting off her maternal instincts and being hard because somebody needed to be the breadwinner, somebody needed to bring home the bacon, and if that meant she had to suck it up and sell used oil drums from confinement with a kidney infection after giving birth, well, it wasn't her lot to cry about it. The boy needed a father, the boy needed a home, someone else would have to smother the boy with affection. My abuela was going to provide and discipline, even if it broke her heart. What you need to know about my mother is that one time in an airport, her husband said to his mother, "You're an ungrateful piece of shit," and he turned and he left her there, standing alone. And my mother couldn't understand what he had said. My mother didn't really speak Spanish, but she could feel him shaking. She saw how his elbows stuck out, how he shoved the cart full of luggage, and she knew that whatever had happened, her mother-in-law had hurt him again. Hurt him worse than she'd ever seen, and she felt her own anger tightening her stomach, matching his hurt, because she knew he was right. And she picked up the baby and she grabbed me by the hand and led us back after our father back to California. You get to Buenos Aires as a grown-up and you talk like a kid, and no one will believe that you're a citizen. When you tell them your national ID number, they think you're mistaken, because that number is way off from the numbers they give people born in the country. When you finally go to vote, you understand. They organize the tables by ID number, and you're standing in line with your sister and a whole bunch of people old enough to be your grandparents. Somewhere on the other side of the room are the people your age. And if your father had stayed or your parents had come back, you would be standing over there with your generation. As it is, when your friends reference El Chavo del Ocho or Charlie Garcia, you just smile tighter and hope they don't notice that you're lost. But you can sing a samba by Eduardo Falú or a tango by Astor Piazzolla, and so what does it matter that you have citizenship? Your idea of the country is 40 years out of date, and they'll always be able to tell that you're from somewhere else. What you need to know about my father is that one time in an airport, he said to his mother, "You're an ungrateful piece of shit," and he turned and he left her there, standing alone, because he'd done everything he could. He always did everything he could for her. He built the house she lived in with money he couldn't afford to take out of his business, but she asked, and so somehow he found a loan. He found someone to sell something to, and somehow he got the money to build the house with a third floor, which she had designed for him to move back to without ever asking whether he wanted to come back to Argentina. And he was the one who had turned the farm around, had made it functional and profitable so she'd have money to support her through her old age. But she was still criticizing. She was still tearing down every little thing he did, and going behind his back and changing his orders and telling him he was a fool, and now finally he'd had enough. And he didn't care. She could run the farm into the ground as far as he was concerned. He was so angry he was shaking. He walked blindly toward security in the gate and got on the plane to California and didn't talk to her for 2 years. What did Abuela do during those years of silence? What did she think as the farm declined through mismanagement? Did she have trouble sleeping? At night, did she climb the cold steps to walk the empty third floor of the house, the bedrooms we'd never come to live in? Did her door squeak as she returned to her bedroom? Did she spend long mornings in bed staring at the crucifixes hung on the wall? Did her maid prepare her morning coffee and biscuits and tap quietly on the door? Or did she have lunches with old friends, each teetering on a different edge of death, and sit proud and sad as they thought of her ungrateful son but said nothing? Did she remember her first husband, the Jew who had converted for love of her, a battle she'd won even though she had lost his family's support as a young widow with a newborn? Was she worried for our souls? Did she go to meetings and pray for us? Life is hard if God wills it so. Everything happens for a reason. What you need to know about me is that one time in an airport, my father said to his mother, "You're an ungrateful piece of shit," and I have no memory of this event. What you need to know about my sister is that one time in an airport, our father said to his mother, "You're an ungrateful piece of shit," and he turned and he left her there standing alone, and we flew back to California. My sister doesn't know about this because she was a baby and I haven't told her. All of her memories of Argentina are staying up late at late-night barbecues after long summer days, and all I remember is my grandmother making my father angry, my mother depressed, and long weeks of rain. Do you remember her house? No. Do you remember her house? Yes. Tell me about the house. Tell me what you remember. I remember the living room. Okay. You're 10, your father and grandmother are yelling at each other in the kitchen of a house you're always bored in. No. Tell it like you remember. Daddy and Abuela are yelling. They're in the kitchen. Mommy's in the kitchen with them. She's always there when they're fighting, but she never says anything. And Emiliana, the maid, is talking to you. Sol's in the living room too. Maybe she's listening, I can't remember. Emiliana is saying something. She's swearing you to secrecy. She's telling you, she's saying the word. Tell it to me. Chinchilla. It's in Spanish. You won't even let yourself know how much you miss in that language right now, and you're sworn to secrecy, so you can't ask a grown-up later why she was talking about chinchillas. Mama! Daddy yells in the kitchen, his voice going high. Your friend had 3 chinchillas as pets when you were in 2nd grade. They look like earless bunnies and bathe in dust. That's all you remember and your tummy hurts. But it seems like that's what Emiliana's talking about. Emiliana, the maid who's 50 years old, a member of the Legión de María from Paraguay, she's telling you about a wall of chinchillas. You're fluent, so that must be what she's saying. Something about chinchillas on a patio, but she's sworn you to secrecy, so you can't ever ask anybody about what the hell she means. Tell it to me. Days later, you are standing in front of the wall of chinchillas. And that's what it is, an actual wall of cages. It goes up maybe twice as tall as you are. Daddy's hair still has some black in it. You're looking at the chinchillas and you know they're bad news. Maybe a grown-up will explain why eventually, but for now you know that hundreds of chinchillas in a dusty passageway in 100-degree heat in Buenos Aires cannot be a good thing. Sawdust fills the air, golden and hazy in the afternoon sun. Emiliana is wringing her hands quietly, standing next to her husband who has been caring for the hundreds of chinchillas. Her husband who is unemployed. Her husband who needs to be paid because these are your grandmother's chinchillas. These are your grandmother's chinchillas that she has made her maid house in the patio outside her apartment. And in 20 years, you will understand that there was a farm, that was what Daddy and Abuela thought about in the airport that day, that she has sold the family farm and invested it in hundreds of chinchillas. It's 1996. PETA's throwing paint, and your grandmother invests her nest egg in the future of fur coats. She has no money left and nowhere to turn. She swallows her pride after years of silence and calls Daddy. And that is why they started speaking again. Do you remember Daddy's face in that moment? No. What did he say? I don't remember. He was quiet. He was wearing shorts. Maybe he ran a hand through his hair. Did he think her mind was going? No, not yet. So this was just normal? Nothing she did ever seemed normal. Do you remember what happened? I didn't understand.